Hello there! I'm Scotty. You're not, and welcome back today. Hold on a minute. This seems like it's very. Let's see if that works. It seems very high, and now I am cut off. Hey. Yep. Better? I hope. Better. Alright. So, welcome back to day 11 of birth month, and we were talking about Swan Princess, or The Swan Princess, a movie that is an independently released feature that was subsequently released or distributed by Sony, now Warner Brothers, as the nostalgia critic incorrectly put. The opening of his review for this was a Warner Brothers cartoon, an animated Warner Brothers film that's not the Iron Giant. That would be a good intro if it was in fact a Warner Brothers film, which it is not. Sorry. Even says Sony on the back. No Warner Brothers anywhere. It was independently produced by this independent company called Nest, and then was distributed on VHS and DVD as by Columbia Pictures, aka Sony now. So, yes, and this was one that was in the rotation of stuff I watched growing up. Really, that princess movie? I thought you said you didn't like princess movies. Well, I had a sister, in case you forget, and she liked to watch it too. But I always found this to be fun. I always found this to be kind of like in the vein of Sleeping Beauty, where the prince has a lot to do, unlike with Snow White or Cinderella, where the prince is minimal in those films. The prince gets a lot to do in this. And the name, Snow White. Anyway, he's just Prince Charming in that. And I don't know if he's Prince Charming. Prince Charming is Snow White, is Cinderella. That's Prince Charming. So Prince, just the prince. The Prince. I don't even have a name. The Prince. But here is Prince Derek. Yes, and Odette is our princess. But, back in the 90s, Disney was the king. Disney was on top of everything animated, especially. And, they had their renaissance. Even some of their non-Renaissance films, those ones that were put out by different animation studios that Disney had, like a Goofy movie, which people say, oh, it was only good in retrospect, but I still say it was good back then too, but yeah, they were kicking out good ones. So other studios tried to capitalize on the Disney formula, which is how we got movies like Anastasia, Titan A.E., and Thumbelina from 20th Century Fox. Troll in Central Park was there too. Don Bluth was doing his thing in Universal, with like the All Dogs Go to Heaven movies, which was technically 80s, but there was a sequel, and I don't know if he directed, but and he had American Tail and its sequel, and Rock-a-Doodle, which I still say is a great film, and all that stuff over there. And then you had DreamWorks was starting up in the 90s, not to the mid to late 90s, because Pixar was a thing in 1995, which was after this, and then DreamWorks was the, that. But other animation studios were trying to top Disney, and this little independent studio came in with theirs, and, I think this is a solid film. Problem is, it was released in 1994, and in 1994, Disney released The Lion King. Yes, but Lion King was released in June, and this was released in November. So it has some kind of a chance, right? Hello? What do you mean they re-released The Lion King in November? Well, shit. Never stood a chance, I guess. Imagine believe that Disney saw this little podunk film from an independent studio and saw it as a threat and decided to re-release The Lion King just to fuck with it. It does sound like Disney, more and more think about it, but I don't know. This is an animated adaptation of Swan Lake, and it sees the story is that Prince Derek and Prince Odette are basically groomed, for lack of a better term, to fall in love with each other, but the prince messes up, which causes Odette to leave. Meanwhile, an evil sorcerer named Rothbart, who has vowed to get revenge on Odette's father, the king, kidnaps Odette and basically kills the king, and vows that, to get revenge and wants the king's kingdom by marrying Odette. And while everyone else believes that Odette is gone, Derek does not and vows to get her back. Meanwhile, Rothbard has Odette in a secret area on Swan Lake where it puts a spell on her to turn into a swan, but if she stands on the lake when the moon rises, she will turn human again, but if she leaves, she'll turn back into a swan. Which I think is a bullshit cheat. That as long as the moon is shining, she should be able to be human. But they have to put that little caveat in there: if she leaves, she turns into a swan. Otherwise, she could just run off and find him and the movie would be over. So we start off with a narration, which sounds like it's from the voice actor who does Derek, but is trying to do a different voice so that it doesn't sound like Derek, but I think it's him. I don't know. Telling us the story that the king was getting too old. He wanted a family, and so he had a daughter named Odette, and the mom disappears, dies off screen. So, yeah. So the king and the queen of another kingdom, Queen Uberta, Derek's mother, who also has no husband, which means I don't know if she'd be able to rule without. I don't know how hierarchy goes, but maybe she would. Queen Elizabeth was a thing, right? So anyway, I don't know. They decide that they are going to try to court their kids every summer until they're older in hopes that they fall in love and unite the kingdoms. Stuff like that could get you arrested. That's grooming, and that's not legal. But they're kings and queens, and I don't know. It doesn't necessarily work if the kids hate each other. It's not. It's fine to have play dates, but when your whole thing is for them to fall in love and get married, you are pushing your kids to do something they don't want to do, and that sort of it kind of trips the line of, And I should also mention that Prince Derek also has a friend named Bromley, who becomes important later on, but he's just a friend here. And we have a song, This Isn't My Idea of Fun, as we watch them grow up. And because, Odette is an awkward looking girl, when she grows up, she's beautiful. And Prince Derek, of course, is going to be a handsome man, because, of course, he has. And now that he sees that Odette is beautiful, he wants to marry her. But she, because the 90s, we had to have a strong female lead. She's like, wait, what do you like about me? He's like, well, you're beautiful. She's like, and what else? And his response is, what else is there? And even like one of the guys, I think it's Chamberlain, like, or maybe it's Rogers that does it, but it's like, Rogers is his manservant person. Mentioning like a royal vizier, like a Jafar, but he's a good guy. But yeah, so to rewind a little bit, Rothbart's this evil sorcerer who has a problem with the king, and they frame it where he's at Odette's birth and then vows to get revenge then, and then is found and captured, arrested for his dark magics, but then he gets out and gets revenge, and he attacks the carriage carrying Odette and the king dies? ? The reason I say question mark is because he still wants the king's kingdom. But with Odette captured and the king dead, who's in charge of that kingdom? If, because we are presented with the fact that the whole world besides Derek believes Odette is dead. Not dead. Dead. So who runs that kingdom now? Does the kingdom even still have a hierarchy? Has it fallen? We don't know. We're never presented with anything. It's a kids' movie, I guess. As an adult, you think about such things. But anyway, um, so yeah, he puts the curse on her. Says, yeah, you turn to a swan unless you stand on Swan Lake when the moon is up, and there. Yes. So everyone has moved on. They think she's dead. Derek has not. And so now we get into the song Practice, 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 where he practices his hunting skills with Bromley. They use these powder arrows on the servants. And Bromley is a cheater because, like, Prince Derek is shooting all these guys with the red powder stuff, and Bromley is blue. So when it's time for Rogers to count all the stuff, obviously, like, Derek has tallied up a whole bunch and Bromley's done nothing, but he's hitting the rabbit, which is worth 100, on the head. I do like it though when he's like, "Come on, you lot, you have to be ferocious." And then Wesley, who's the rabbit, growls. He's like, "Not you, Wesley, you're a rabbit." I always love that line. "Not you, Wesley, you're a rabbit." But yeah, so they count it, and he's like, and Bromley's like, and Rogers is like, 3 shots, 100 each, and he's like, "Yeah, that's 300 to 293 or whatever it was," and Derek's like, "Oh, Rogers, check again, because we did the shot where he shoots at the rabbit's butt, but we don't see what happens, and it turns out it was underneath the tail was a red spot. Underneath the tail is the butthole, and it's red. I don't want to think about that." So he gets another 100, means it's 393 to 300. So Derek still wins, and no one calls Bromley out for cheating because, especially Wesley, who's dressed as the rabbit, doesn't say, "Well, he was pumping out of my head. Cheating. He cheated." No? I feel like that would have been a better thing than just saying, "Oh, no, actually, he did shoot him on the butt, and so that counts." I don't know. Meanwhile, Odette, while trapped on Swan Lake, meets 3 animal friends. Jean Bob, the frog, voiced by John Cleese, who, by the way, Rothbart is voiced fantastically by Jack Palance, who is well known for playing villains. He was Grissom in Batman 89, and he is great as Rothbart. He has that voice and vocal range to play this dark, brooding bad guy with this voice that he just projects. Yeah, he just does that. And in contrast, Derek, you have the strong and dulcet, I don't know, the strong tones of the voice actor. I don't know who did the voice of him. I didn't look it up. But yeah, then you have Jean Cleese, who, despite playing Jean Bob, the frog, who thinks he was basically Frog Prince. He thinks he was a prince. By the way, in Shelley Duvall's, did you know that Shelley Duvall's fairy tale theater, Frog Prince was Robin Williams? I grew up watching the Thumbelina one myself with Carrie Fisher and William Catt. Holy shit, when I realized who that was. Yeah, William Catt was the prince. Anyway, and that Conchata Ferro was her mother. I need to track that down and do it next year. I need to do that. I was going to do it this year. I'm lucky to get the stuff I did. Anyway, that was the one I watched all the time. We had it on VHS. So, anyway, so Jean Bob thinks he's a prince because, Frog Prince. Then you have Speed, who's a turtle, voiced by Stephen Wright. Because when I think kids movie, I think a guy who talks like this all the time is pretty funny. I mean, he's an adult comedian. He is pretty funny, but it's like, talks like this all the time, even as a turtle. And they animate the turtle as being happy and stuff, but you know that Steve Wright's just in that booth going, "Okay, Princess Odette, let's go into this." But Okay, Princess Odette, we're gonna do this. And then the voice doesn't really match. And then there's Puffin, Lieutenant Puffin. I don't remember who does his voice, but the three of them, they're good little comic reliefs. And of course, they're trying to copy Disney formula of talking animals in movies. But the mechanics of this doesn't make sense to me. So, here's my issue. So, Odette cannot leave Swan Lake because she turns into a swan. And as a swan, she can't talk to people, I guess. But she's talking to these animals, and you're thinking, okay, it's because she turns into a swan. However, at the end of the movie, Jean Bob, who thinks he was turned back into a prince, walks in dressed as a prince, says a bonjour to a woman who freaks out, which means she can hear him talk, which means all you needed to do is have Puffin, who is injured at the beginning of this, but he eventually gets his wings back working again, have him fly out to the kingdom, tell the prince, hey, your princess is on Swan Lake, and she got the sorcerer put a spell on her to turn into a swan. I don't even know that's how his voice is, but you could have told him that, but they don't do that for some reason. Also, these three animals talk, but the alligators don't. Just saying. What's the mechanic here? It's like Pocahontas. None of the animals talk, but the tree does. I don't know. But yeah, and I should mention that the only way to free her from her spell is for her true love to make a vow of everlasting love, prove it to the world, and yeah, that whole thing. And it gets more confusing as we go, but So one thing I was confused about is, so the animals, they sing a song called No Fear, but John Cleese is not the singing voice for Jean Bob, and John Cleese can sing. You ever heard him on Monty Python and stuff? He can sing. Why they felt the need to replace him? It's like the Goofy movie. Jason Marsden can sing, but they replaced him with Aaron Lore because they didn't think Jason Marsden could sing. Aaron Lore can sing, sure. They replaced him. In fact, Aaron Lore and Jason Marsden were friends, and they were talking one time back in the day, and he's like, oh, I gotta go dub over the singing voice for some guy who can't sing for the Goofy movie. Jason Marsden can sing, and I don't know. I wish his singing voice was Aaron Lore is pretty good. But it's like here, John Cleese can sing. Why did they have to overdub him with someone else? I don't think Jack Palance sings either. The two leads do because they were like Broadway actors, but so they could sing, but they didn't. So one day on a hunt for the great animal, supposedly, which the king did tell him it's not what it seems. The great animal is not what it seems. But hunting, he finds Odette, who has left, and she's a swan, and she lures him back, and just as you think he's going to shoot her with the arrow, the animals distract him, and she turns into Odette, and then she has to explain the whole situation. He says, tomorrow night you come to the ball, and I will declare my love for you. And yeah, like every night, Rothbart shows up to propose, so he shows up again to propose, and Derek has to leave. But he found Derek's bow because Derek didn't think of grabbing it before he left. I don't know. And so he knows there's something up. So he turns his ugly little hag maid, for lack of a better term, into Odette to take her place. Because as he points out, there will be no moon because it's a waning moon, I think is the one where it's going away. So there'd be no moon the next night, which she should have known, but she forgot for some reason. I say the whole moon thing is kind of a stupid mechanic. Why can't it just be every night? Why isn't that gotta be a moon? I don't know. So she's not gonna turn human. So Rothbart's plan is to bring in his fake Odette to trick him. So the queen, in the meantime, has orchestrated this pageant with other girls to try to Sway, that's him, Sway, uh, Derek into marrying someone else. He shows up and says he's already found a woman and they're going to get married, but doesn't tell them who it is and he's going to marry her. However, she still goes on with the pageant. Like the next night, they go on to the pageant and they introduce each girl as if they're showing it to him, and I'm going, but he already said he found someone to marry. Why are you still doing this? Couldn't you just have a phone call to all the kingdoms and be like, oh, we got to cancel. You found someone. Why are we still doing this? Was it too late? I don't know. Anyway, he dips his mom's own hair in the punch. And she says nothing. But anyway, it's a cartoon. Who cares? So, fake Odette shows up. Wearing black. Yeah, she's wearing a black dress with a red twin and trim. Instead of the white dress with the gold trim. It's blue there. But her dress was white. You know, she's wearing a black dress because she's evil. She's not really Odette. She's evil. And he confesses his love to her just as real Odette flies to the window. And because he declares his love to the wrong woman, she dies. That was never explained. And when he realizes it's not, because Rothbart shows up and gloats. And oh, you made love to the wrong, you made your pact of love to the wrong woman. Ha 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 ha. And then he runs to Swan Lake where he finds Odette. She's flown back and she falls. And she dies. She's dead. She's laying there in his arms dead. And he's yelling to whatever who's in control of the curse. My declaration was for her. My declaration was for her. But of course, we gotta have a big to-do. So, before I get to this, I gotta go back after the practice thing. They play a little game, which I don't remember what it was called, where Bromley has an apple on. He's wearing a suit of armor. He's got an apple on his head, and he shoots an arrow at Derek, who grabs it and shoots it back at the apple on Bromley's head. I say that because Bromley disappears and we find out that he was in the woods and Rothbart found him and threw him in the dungeon with Odette. And thanks to the animals, they both got out. So, Rothbart turns into the great animal and tries to fight Derek, who's out of arrows because he has no freaking quiver. But he hears Bromley, turns around, Bromley shoots the arrow, he grabs it, he shoots it at Rothbart in the heart, and kills him, which, I don't know, breaks the spell, and her death, I don't know. But she's alive, and they get married, and she kisses Jean-Bob, nothing happens. He thinks he's the prince, he looks in the water, but there's another prince standing there, which, his reflection would still be in the water. I'm just saying. Yeah, and then he walks in and scares the lady, which makes me think they can hear him talk. She's human now. She can hear it. Still hear them talk. And Puffin is now General Puffin. And yeah. This was the first of a trilogy of films released back in the 90s and early 2000s. But yeah, they did go on to make a bunch of CG animated ones that I didn't really care about. In fact, I didn't even know about them until about 10 years, 2011, I think it was. Still more than 10 years ago, but you know what I mean. Like 2011, when I was looking up the other ones, I'm like, what are these other ones? And more have been released since I looked up, because there was like 6, and I was like, 8? I don't know. The CGI ones looks like the quality of the CGI Barbie movies that came out back in the day that my sister used to get. She'd get the VHS tape and the Barbie doll with it. She'd collect those. She wouldn't take them out of the box. She'd just collect them. She had a bunch of other Barbies, but she used to do those. Barbie and a Nutcracker, and I don't know the other ones. I don't know what I can think of. Barbie and a Magic Toothpick. I don't know. No, that wasn't one. But, yeah. I choose to believe that the 3 regular animated ones were the only ones in canon. Because, I don't know, it just feels right. Though they do beat the Aladdin, and that they actually get married in this movie instead of waiting 3 movies to do it. Well, 3 movies in an animated series for Aladdin. But, yeah, I'm going to say this is pretty good. And it still holds up. The animation is still really good. The voice acting is great. There are some plot issues, like I went out with it, but it's still pretty good. It holds up for me. So, what are your thoughts on the Swan Princess? Let me know in the comments below. Make sure to like, share, and subscribe. Thank you for watching. I'm Scotty, and I'll see you in the next one.